The time is now 6 o'clock, and I call this November 30th, 2022 council workshop meeting to order, and we'll begin with the pledge. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll jump right in. We'll begin with a presentation, Valley Meadows Park bicycle pump track. Mr. Cox. And as always, we know who you are, but we need your name and address.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to give a brief update and presentation on our pump track project developments and where we are. Jonathan Cox, 901 Glendale Court, Carlisle, PA. And with me this evening is Mark Heap, Cumberland. So I'm here tonight on behalf of Cumberland Youth Cycling Development, the organization that's partnering with the borough to move the pump track project forward. I'm the secretary and pro bono counsel. Mark Heap is our president. John Rose is our treasurer. And our VIP this evening, Emily Rose, who's one of the riders on our youth mountain biking team. So I just wanted to extend my thanks and appreciation to Andrea and to Mark for working with us going on, I think, 4 years now. So it's taken some time to get here, but we're finally here. So before council this evening is what we're asking for council this evening is to approve the final plans and specs, including the bid specifications and contract documents, so that we can move forward with bidding the project. We successfully wrapped up our capital campaign in late spring of this year. Obviously, we're hopeful that the bids come in within the estimates that we've compiled. We all know that the world has that's been a challenge over the last couple of years, but we're confident and optimistic that that will be the case here. So a significant part, a not insignificant part of our budget was tied up in engineering and planning costs and permitting expenses, soft costs. We are at or right on under, perhaps a little bit under budget on that. So we've taken a significant risk off the table in terms of the overall project budget. We have a 15% contingency built into our cost estimate and budget as well. So again, we're optimistic that that we'll be able to move forward based on the fundraising that we've completed to date and the budget estimates that we have. So I know Andrea put together a comprehensive packet for your review this evening. We presented, functionally the layout of the pump track has not changed since we presented the preliminary plan to council a year or so ago. We can go through the drawings, but you have them, and they're really just detailed engineering specifications that we need to move forward with the project. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I'm also happy to turn the mic over to Mr. Heap if you have any questions, detailed questions about the plans and specifications, as he was kind of our liaison with BL companies on the design. So
we typically will have discussion after a motion and second, but it makes much more sense to have any questions and discussion now. So we'll go ahead and do that. Councilor Mellon.
Yeah, so congratulations on hitting your fundraising goal, John. As a fundraiser, though, I got to ask, if for some reason the bids come back higher than you expected, do you have a backup plan? Is there something you could alter in the project so that you would be able to complete it, or what would your plan be if the bids are more than you have?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. No, I appreciate that. As I said, we've built a pretty significant contingency into the budget for obvious reasons. I prefer not to discuss the total cost estimate for the project in public session before we bid and how much money we raised, but we do have a 30% or a 15% contingency, but we also have we have excess cash over and above our cost estimates, over and above that 15%. We also built bid alternates into the bid specs, so there are certain aspects of the project that we could carve out, at least from the initial phase, that we could come back and do specific fundraising for. So through a combination of those things, I think we'll be able to manage that if that ends up being an issue. Yeah, bet.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, thank you.
Actually, my only it's just a comment. I've watched this build over the years, and with our work at the skate park, there's always the comment. Stephanie gets them all the time. But what about the pump track, right? So like people have been very excited about that, and I appreciate all the work that you've done to bring this, and I love our public-private partnerships on parks over the years. Like I think that's a uniquely Carlisle thing that has made it a stronger place, and also I appreciate you folks being in the Halloween parade, and I think more bikes should be in the Halloween parade. So I like that.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with that.
I know. I was on a bike too in the
Halloween
parade,
we're really excited, to have come this far and to be in a position to move this forward, and I really appreciate and thank you for persevering with us. There are a lot of, as you said, Brenna, there are a lot of amazing things happening in the borough right now, and this is fantastic that the borough is moving forward with the skate park and the pump track right on its heels. So we are hoping to complete the track by late summer, early fall of 2023. So lots of good things happening in the borough. Thank you for your good work. Anything else?
I should ask while you're there, is there any public comment or question on this? So it makes a little more sense to do that now too. Anything on Zoom? No, nothing. All right, you're off the hook.
All right, great. Thank you.
And just because it seems anticlimactic, if we do minutes and then come back to this, why don't we have the Parks and Recreation Committee handle the motion now?
I move that Council approve Cumberland Youth Cycling Development's design and bid specifications for the construction of a pump track in the northeast corner of Valley Meadows Park, contingent upon Borough Solicitor approval.
I'll second that motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you all. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Next, any citizens to be heard who have been scheduled prior? We don't have no last minute scheduling, I assume, since nobody else is really here in Borough Hall that isn't presenting on something else. So we'll move on to meeting minutes. Is there a motion to review and approve the October 5th, 2022 workshop meeting minutes?
So moved.
A motion by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Mellon. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion passes. We've already dealt with Parks and Recreation Committee, so we can move down to the Public Works Committee, which I think we're just going to pitch straight over to staff anyway. So, Mr. Mallarch, I guess the room is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. The first item on the agenda is the Bedford Street and East Penn Street intersection traffic calming project. And we have with us tonight two members of the engineering team that's working on that from Darwood, and they have a bit of a presentation that they'd like to give to council. So if I'd give them the floor.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Danielle Deeroff. I'm with Dawood Engineering,
And Chad Decker, Dawood Engineering as well.
and we're here to present preliminary concept plans for the Bedford Street traffic calming project. This is phase one of what's expected to be a two-phase project that will tie into the larger corridor. So up on the screen now is just our concept plan for the intersection. It is a 5-leg intersection with all one-way streets, and we are proposing curb extensions on each corner to help slow vehicular traffic. One thing to note right off the bat, the pavement markings that are shown up there for the bike lane and the angle parking, those are just conceptual. They're to tie into what some past concepts showed for phase two, and they're just to show that our concept will work if the borough decides to proceed with the angled parking. But the concept could work with other layouts as well. So some things to point out in addition to the curb extensions. I don't think, can I show my mouse? Alright, so up, there are a couple of blue rectangles shown on the screen. What those are trench drains, which I can show you on the next slide an example, but basically they're to make sure that we don't catch any stormwater runoff in the curb extensions. It all flows downhill to the nearest inlets. Otherwise, the intersection is basically at a high point, so we're not expecting many stormwater issues there. One other, I guess, key kind of change to the existing layout is that we are relocating this existing crosswalk across Penn Street over to here. And there are a couple reasons for that. One of them is to narrow the crossing distance. And I guess the other primary reason is to improve sight distance for vehicles turning onto Bedford Street from Penn Street and from Kerrs Avenue. Kerrs Avenue has a stop up here, and they would yield to Penn Street traffic, which would come through and stop at the stop bar here, and they would both then stop for Bedford Street, which does not have a stop sign before turning right. Anything you want to add on the concept?
No, I think you got everything there. There is one change. Like currently, traffic going east on Penn, there's 2 stop signs, and they're about 15 feet apart. Just observing traffic there, and I'm sure you're familiar. Not everybody stops at both of those, so it kind of simplifies that situation with one stop sign for Penn Street traffic.
Can I ask a quick question about the blue rectangles? Are those just your regular drainage areas that we would see on the road, or are they more of a planted drainage basin?
So the blue rectangles themselves are these trench drains that are now shown on the screen. So they would be kind of a gap in between the existing curb and the curb extension to allow water to flow through. I guess one other thing to note just about the curb extensions themselves, we're showing them all with this kind of beige color, which looks like concrete. Final materials for these are going to be determined at a later date, whether it's plantings, matching like the brick sidewalk that's present up on this corner. Those things are not set in stone yet. So. But we're not expecting right now any stormwater infiltration in the curb extensions, just due to the fact that the intersection's kind of at a high point and we're not expecting to catch much water.
And can I just ask one question just to clarify? So currently there is a stop sign where that crosswalk is on East Penn Street.
There's a stop sign right here, and there's another one right here.
But I mean, like where the crosswalk is back a little bit, right there. Is there a stop sign there currently?
There's not.
Okay.
No.
All right. That's
and
what I
we're
was.
Proposing yield arrows on the pavement as well as pedestrian crossing signage.
Okay. Thank you.
What's the distance between that new crosswalk and the stop sign?
It's probably about 30 feet.
Okay.
So traffic that's leaving Currs Avenue basically won't have to conflict with the pedestrian crossings on Penn.
Right.
So there's a couple safety benefits from doing it that way. One, we're able to move the stop bar further east, so there's better sight distance looking back on Bedford. And it almost creates a mid-block crosswalk for the pedestrians, but it's a much shorter crosswalk. As they're waiting to cross, they're a little bit further into the street. They can be seen by cars as they step in. And just having those two curb extensions where they are does narrow the street. There's one lane of operation there, so that should slow traffic down as they get closer to Bedford Street.
For cars going east on East Penn, where is the stop marking that they're responding to that stop sign? Where it's actually right there.
Yes.
Okay, so it's between the stop sign and the walk where they would be expected to stop. Okay.
So we did get a chance yesterday to.
Yeah, what I would want to point out is that currently there's one lane of travel on North Bedford Street, north of the intersection, and as soon as you get to the intersection, it converts over to 2 lanes. This concept continues the 1 lane at least for I don't know how many feet that is, but at least 100 feet or so, until it converts over to 2 lanes before the light at North Street.
So just so that I'm reading this right, someone who wanted to go northbound on North Bedford coming from Currs would stop twice, correct?
If you're on Currs Avenue and you would stop on Currs, you would enter Penn Street
And stop right there,
stop again.
and you'd kind of be tilted, but turn on your right turn signal and be on your way. Okay, got it.
And that is how it's currently operating today as well. There's currently a stop sign on Currs, and then there's actually 2 stop signs here at the corner of
They
Penn.
would go through 3 stop signs in the current condition. It would be 2 in the proposed condition.
It's a very odd intersection and challenging. I'm from a professional perspective. I'm sure. When I took my son to daycare, Currs Avenue was like our secret way to get to daycare down on Pomfret Street. So he thought it was like anytime we go there, it was like some magical trip because we're going on some road that we don't typically go on. But it is, having driven through that pretty frequently, as a driver, it's challenging, and trying to find the best way to simplify that and make it safe for pedestrians. When I first looked at this, having that, I'm always concerned about mid-block crosswalks because those are tend to be less safe for pedestrians. But the way this is all configured, I'm not sure that there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting intersection. There's 5 legs to it. Even though it appears to be mid-block, it is really confined within the intersection proper.
Mm-hmm.
There can be additional signing to the west to notify people crosswalk ahead. We have a couple signs there. We can easily add more signs. 500 feet ahead, there's some crossing.
Any other questions or comments? Mark, did you have anything else to add here?
They have some more.
Oh, yeah.
To show.
So yesterday we got a chance to go out to the intersection and meet with the fire department. So they came out with their largest ladder truck, and we set some cones up at the locations of these curb extensions to confirm that the trucks would be able to navigate through the intersection. So we have two quick videos showing that. This first one is the right-hand turn from Penn Street onto Bedford Street. we actually discovered that they did not come anywhere near the cones that we had laid out or anywhere near what we were showing in our simulation. So it was nice for us to be able to get out there and see that. And then the other one we ran with them, so this would be the left turn from Bedford onto Penn. And this turn specifically is just very tight because of the sharp angle of the intersection. So one thing to note here is that, I guess two things to note. One, our curb extension on this corner would likely be nearly, if not fully, flush with the existing pavement. It'll be more of a visual deterrent than a physical one, because it's going to be difficult for probably even a box truck to make this turn without running over it. And the other thing to note here is we did actually have the ladder truck make the turn without any cones there. And in both cases, he does have to stop mid-turn and back up and then continue his turn.
So as you saw, several cones were hit, but like Danielle indicated, that curb extension will likely be flush. Talking to the driver, they might make that turn once or twice a year. So if the truck were to drive over that concrete, it would be flush. There's no vertical difference there. It wouldn't be that big a deal for him to just drive over that curb extension.
Just curious, since this is a one-way, is there any reason why we couldn't consider putting the bike path on the other side of Bedford, where it would, in my mind, the biggest threat scenario is a biker or someone on a scooter coming going south on North Bedford and somebody making a right-hand turn, not seeing it. If we put all of that bike lane on the other side, continuing on the other side across Penn, is there any reason that couldn't be an option?
Normal convention is to have the bike lane to the right of traffic, and with the angle parking, if that goes forward, the bike lane also serves as a buffer for parking vehicles as well. Coming down Bedford, you can make a left turn onto Penn. So if the bike lane were on the left side of the vehicular traffic, there's more of a conflict, I would think, with cars turning left, having the bikers on the left as well.
So there's no possible right turn from Bedford onto Penn, right?
That's correct.
That's one. It's one way there. Okay.
Everything's one way into the intersection from the west and the north, and one way away from the intersection on the south and east.
Okay, so you were saying somebody making a left-hand turn from Bedford to Penn is a scenario you would be concerned with moving. Yeah, would be reason you would be concerned even moving it over. Yeah, okay.
On the left side,
Right.
the one permitted turn at this intersection is that left turn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then another benefit of moving the stop bar on Penn closer to the intersection, a better sight line to see a bicycle is coming on the near side of the road as well.
Any other questions? Is there any more slides?
We're just going to present a quick project schedule. Here tonight we're presenting preliminary design, looking for any feedback you have to make changes to our concept. Moving forward, we're planning to meet with the neighborhood association and get feedback from them. And then overall project schedule would be to finalize plans in the spring and hopefully go to construction next summer.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Sorry.
So to clarify, you'd mentioned this is phase 1 and phase 2. So this concept is just for the curb bump outs. Is that correct? Like the other designs on there, like the bike lane or the angle parking, they were concepts we had discussed previously. That would be separate from this. This proposal is just for the curb bump outs, and then it's just showing that those other concepts could still move forward in the future if we desire to pursue that. Is that correct?
Yep, this would include the crosswalks, the new curb ramps, the signs that are shown here, but not the parking or the bike lanes.
So this concept will work even if the borough chooses to do nothing with the revision from 2 lanes to 1, the additional bike lanes. It'll still serve to calm traffic through the intersection. The biggest safety challenge here is as you're coming down Bedford Street, it goes from 1 lane to 2 on a skew, which is having been out there for a short period of time yesterday. Cars come into the intersection, they just take right off. This is going to tighten things up a little bit visually and physically, so it should serve as a gateway to the south side of Bedford Street to really help that neighborhood out safety-wise.
I know the one house on the corner is a distraction because it's so beautiful, and the people there keep their lawns so immaculate. So it's good that we have these extra safety measures in place.
We did hear somebody on council lives there. Right?
If only that house weren't there, we could have a roundabout.
Yeah. So to clarify, I live there, and yeah, that's.
We have a concept for a roundabout we could show.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to pay me to take the house, I guess maybe we can. Just kidding. I would just share that obviously living there, I do think there's need for some improvements to this intersection. It is a very real example. There was an individual who was struck in a hit and run accident not that long ago at this intersection. And then last year there was a home that was struck by a vehicle. So obviously there are safety concerns at this intersection that I think merit us considering improving it.
And I would just like to say that I appreciate the use of the fire truck, but also, as you noted, there's only maybe twice a year that they have to make that maneuver, but there's people walking on those corners all the time. So we do get that a lot of can trucks get through here, but at the same time we're trying to make that balance of making sure that it's safe. Not just obviously for when there's a fire, but for just people. And we've had a lot of issues. So I think it's helpful for us to be able to test those boundaries and still be able to prioritize pedestrians and make sure that, everyone can get where they need to go.
Thank you, Brenda. And something else to note that when we took homes away, we had them make that turn again. You can see it looks like a small blue car parked on the south side of Penn Street. There was no car parked there yesterday, and that was a good thing because even without the cones there, without curb extensions, the truck still can't make that turn. Had there been a car parked there, he might not be able to make that turn at all. The basket of the ladder truck extends out maybe 20 feet. It's out there. He may have been able to swing that over top of a car, but if it were a truck, or so. Restricting parking maybe for 1 or 2 spaces there, fire safety might be a good idea.
Is that something we could work on now and not have to wait until this whole project is done, or?
The extension of no parking from that area. Yeah, I'm not sure how we're
It would
handling
really
that.
be about 1 space that would be lost that's closest to the intersection. So it would be as simple as no parking here at the corner, painting the curb yellow. Would be effective.
Is there any reason we shouldn't be doing that now?
Other than high demand for on-street parking.
Even though there will be more parking if we do diagonal parking. I will just add, as we think about materials, probably come as no surprise, I would be highly in favor of anything that was green or sustainable. another yard of concrete in the city will be one more yard that we don't need. So ideas, concepts that would have pervious surfaces or something green would be something I would very much be amenable to pursue.
Yeah, we propose plantings, site or extensions. Just wanting to know any sort of greenery, any sort of plantings do require maintenance. So we wouldn't propose grass per se. That's a lot of maintenance, but small shrubbery, things like that. We don't want to get them too tall because that would block sight lines or bikers or pedestrians. So there are plenty of options.
Yeah, and maybe a local homeowner might want to adopt them. You never know. Yeah.
So to clarify, and I guess maybe this is more a question for you, Mark, is the idea here that this would be, I mean, obviously these are kind of two separate, would it be approached as two separate things? So we would first, if it were to move forward, it would first be doing the bump outs and then at a later date doing the potential bike lane and the angled parking, or would the idea to consider doing them all at once? Or is that kind of up in the air, I guess?
I think, I think it's up in the air. We had proposed and had presented to the neighbors in that area and had actually done a survey, and there was really strong objection to angled parking. That was the item that everyone focused on. So the thought was that we would do it sequentially and do the construction of physical structures first, and then potentially go back and do line marking changes. But I mean, it could be all at the same time.
Yeah, I agree that was, you did an excellent job of conveying the options. I have the impression that it didn't necessarily resonate with folks that the idea with the angled parking would actually provide a net increase in parking locations. There was a lot of things for them to process, but I wonder if we do present it a little bit differently, that there will actually be more available slots in addition to being easier to get in and out. But yeah, I think there was clearly concern about the change of the status quo of how parking was arranged.
Recalling, there was concern that this was a more difficult movement, which in reality it's an easier movement than angled parking. I think that one of the issues is that, depending on what time of day you're parking, you're not really angling, you're just pulling in.
Right. And that's pretty.
Right.
Just a quick question while we're talking about the angled parking. I know that might be a different project. On that schematic, is that how, so in theory, would someone come down Bedford and have to back in, or would those spaces actually be flipped so they could pull right in?
It's always safer to pull forward and have your first move forward. So you would actually stop and back in. Wondering that. Yeah. We thought this may come up, so we had a couple slides about back in angle parking. PennDOT has guidelines and benefits of back in angle parking.
Really, the first movement is kind of the same as parallel parking, unless of course there's no one in front of you and you can just pull in. But the first movement is back into the spot, but then you're pretty much in your spot and ready to go. And it's definitely safer, especially with that bike lane in front of the parking. You don't have bikers getting doored. You have sight distance to see the bikers coming as you're pulling out of your parking spot. And it has a couple other safety benefits too, like when vehicles open their doors and children are getting out, they would have to go through the door to walk into the street, whereas they're kind of directed straight back to the sidewalk. It's easier for unloading your trunk. And then just, overall visibility is generally better with the back-end parking.
Awesome, thank you. And just to clarify, is that PennDOT's preferred method for new projects back in versus parallel, or did they not have a position on?
Not
that?
really a position. This was from a study that was done in District 11 for Pottstown a while back. FHWA does have a publication about bike lanes and on-street parking and how they work together. And it's one of their recommended treatments is the reverse angle parking. I haven't seen anywhere that specifically recommends one over the other, but definitely when you talk about parallel parking, virtually across the board, they definitely like to see buffered bike lanes so that you avoid that conflict with doors.
Awesome, thanks.
I have seen the reverse angle parking elsewhere, but there wasn't in conjunction with a bike lane. And my only comment was that there are a lot of very large vehicles out there today, and so sometimes they would creep into the road. So I think having a bike lane, or at least the line of it, to say that this is where the parking stops, and maybe using some gentle reminders of like to ensure that you're in there. Because I actually saw one of our parking attendants enforcement folks go into the Hamilton the other day to have someone come out who was parked in our bike lane. So I mean, I do know, it's sort of that education of like, no, like that's what that lane is. But I think that having like this is the parking spot and will help that. But there are some people that just have larger vehicles and we see it in commercial parking lots. It'll say like these are for compact cars only or something like that. But as long as we can just work with the neighbors to have them educated of being in the spot, I think that'd be helpful.
Just one more example. So downtown Hershey has backing angle parking right in their main downtown.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
Just another observation that I thought was interesting to share is just the kind of the limited visibility that motorists have in this intersection. In living here, I've noticed that a number of vehicles will, while there is no stop sign, will stop at the intersection of if they are traveling south on Bedford and approaching Penn. There are a number of motorists that will stop there, even though there is no stop sign, just because there is difficulty in seeing and navigating an intersection.
A lot of that yesterday.
So there's
Yeah.
you have one of two things. People either feel like they should stop because of that skew of the intersection, and or two, it's the opposite. They're familiar with it and they just go. So I think those that are from out of town or don't use it that often, their first inclination is they need to stop here, and that's potentially dangerous too. While the car behind them may be expected to accelerate through, and then all of a sudden there's a rear end accident.
Additionally, I forget exactly where it was, but some other cities elsewhere has now prioritized that new crosswalks would be elevated. And even if they wouldn't all be, would there be any potential benefit to specifically on Bedford, the first one, where as a traffic calming measure, even if it's not a stop sign, adding a stop sign there, but sort of like you're saying that people are already slowing down, and that would having a raised crosswalk there, like the traffic table, is that what it's called, over by Dickinson, like the by the gym, the Klein Center over there, they have one, but that's just another thought.
So that's an option too. The only downside to those is going to be snow plowing. So I would prefer plow drivers are aware of it and slow down as they go over it. That's just me too. And I think that'd be, that particular crossing would be a good location.
This mid-block one would also be a really easy one to do it at. And help make drivers aware since there's no stop for that one.
Any other questions, comments? One last search. Mark, anything else to add on this one? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is stormwater.
Thank you, guys. You don't have to stick around. including in your meeting packet is a map of the borough's um, storm source system. And I'd like to spend just a little bit of time talking about this map and the effort it went into producing it. So the borough staff has been working over the last 2.5 years with the engineering consultant to develop a stormwater master plan. And that master plan is intended to be similar to the master plans that were developed for the sanitary sewer system and the water distribution system, a roadmap of activity to be undertaken over the next 10 to 15 years to make improvements to the infrastructure of the borough. The borough's storm source system consists of about 29 miles of buried pipe that range in diameter from 8-inch to up to 54-inch. And that pipe, some of that pipe was put in over 110 years ago, 120 years ago. And it's of varying age and condition. We also have about a little over 1,000 miles of stormwater inlets and 5 miles of grass-lined channels and 3 stormwater retention ponds, in addition to 24 outfalls into Latort Spring Run. The map on the screen shows the stormwater inlets as circles, the stormwater piping is black lines, and the surface water is blue lines. So Latort Spring Run flows through the east side of the borough and eventually enters into the Conagwinnett Creek, which is on the north side. On the far west is Alexander Spring Run, which flows into the Conagwinnett. The master plan, or excuse me, let me back up. The boroughs received a couple of years ago from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection a permit that establishes management responsibilities associated with the storm source system. One of those responsibilities is that we're required to reduce the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment in our stormwater discharges to surface waters of the Commonwealth by 20% over the next permit cycle. And we did develop a pollutant reduction plan which identified those projects that we would be undertaking over the permit cycle to meet that 20% mandate. And the location of those projects are identified on this map as orange squares. So they're located throughout the borough. Part of a main component of the stormwater management plan was the development of a hydraulic model of our system. And that model identifies the location and condition of all of our piping and inlets and allows us to go through scenarios of precipitation events. So that model has been created and we could use it to do a what-if scenario. Now, what if we get 2 inches of rain over 30 minutes? Where will flooding occur? So what was done in this case was we looked at a 10-year frequency event. So that's a storm that occurs once every 10, likely to occur once every 10 years. And that is an event that would generate about 4.6 inches of precipitation over a 24-hour period. Using the model, they ran the storm event through the system and they identified 19 hot spots. And those hot spots are places where the model predicted that we would have flooding of at least 6 inches of water on a road surface during the event. And those hot spots are identified as yellow squares on the map. Some of the hot spots we identified prior to that and told the the modelers that you're going to find this here. This is where we see flooding frequently. For instance, Walnut Bottom Road floods all the time. But they identified 19 of those. We then looked at those and looked at the extent of the flooding and looked at the frequency of the flooding from the standpoint of a 1-year event or 2-year event, 5-year event, and generated a preliminary list of priority locations for projects to be undertaken. And in your package is 2 tables. One, table 1, which lists the proposed high priority projects, and table 2, which lists the remaining hotspot projects. Included in those projects are the projects that we identified as part of the pollutant reduction plan that are required to be undertaken for water quality measures. So the 4 primary areas that are included in table 1 as areas for improvement over the next 5 to 10 years are the intersection of North Hanover Street and Clay and Bedford Street. That's near the Speedway, and I think there's a car dealer or a auto parts store there. That floods frequently. Also, Lincoln Street and North Pitt Street, north of the railroad tracks. The railroad tracks are at a higher elevation and it essentially acts as a dam, and that floods frequently. The third area is the Walnut Bottom Road intersection from the 5-point intersection of Walnut Bottom, Willow, and West south to Belvedere Street. And the fourth primary flooding location is on East High Street at Spring Garden Street intersection. Those were in addition to that, they also identified the Media Road, Gobin Drive area as a flood area. You recall a couple of years ago, we met in this room with residents of that area that primarily flooded not from surface flooding, but more from high groundwater levels, groundwater backing up into their basement. But that was also identified as a primary high priority area. And the other ones are listed in table 2 as more of a lower priority area where it's something that would be included in the plan, but not done in the first several years. So what I would ask of council is to take a look at the map, take a look at the tables, and provide any feedback that you may have on whether or not we have it correct in your mind as far as those ones that are high priority versus secondary priority ones. The consultant has to date run through several of the priority ones from the standpoint of what can be done to reduce that frequency and duration and magnitude of surface flooding, but has not yet developed cost estimates associated with those projects. We'll be doing that for all the high priority ones.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for this. This is great, and I think you hit most of the high priority ones. I did get a question, and I think it'd be helpful for us from a resident when you define, and I think the definition for flooded area was 6 inches or more. In neighborhoods in certain sections where there's maybe water that builds up but doesn't rise to that level and then kind of goes away, right? Which wouldn't be these high priority areas. How are those defined? So I guess what I'm asking, what is the difference? Is there a certain factor? Does it have to be X amount of inches? Does it have to cover the whole roadway? because I'm thinking of these areas we can explain to folks, right? If it comes out off of your curb 3 feet, that's not really a flooded roadway, right? So that wouldn't meet this criteria. Is that accurate?
Uh, I, the, all the areas that were identified in the 19 in hotspots had greater than 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
It was just in looking at identifying, which ones have the most impact on the community. So, for instance, if there's an area where it's not a heavily traveled road, that wasn't as high a priority as another portion of the borough where we have a heavy traveled area.
Awesome, thanks.
I think looking at the high priority ones, I mean, I can pick out. I was hoping that I was going to see Lincoln Street on here because I grew up on Lincoln Street, and it's always been like that. That area there, Lincoln Street and Pitt Street, where they converge, has always been a flooded area. Even when it's not raining super hard, it can really flood. We used to play in that water. I'm older now. I would not even think about allowing my children to play. But as kids, I mean, because it did flood there, you know. So I think this is good. Looking at these because we do need to do something about the flooding in those areas. Trying to drive through that water, even there on Walnut Bottom Road, and not just Walnut Bottom Road, but also right there by the Y. If you're driving on West Street, as you're getting in between what is it? What's that street? Yes, there
Willow.
too, but no, I'm thinking the block of the YMCA, that area there, and then whenever you go from the intersection there of the YMCA, and you're going up to Ridge, that area floods pretty bad there too. Now it goes away quickly. If as soon as it stops raining, it's almost like it goes away quickly, but that floods pretty quickly too.
Yeah, as a resident of who grew up right near Willow, that's been for 40 years at least, has been an issue. So yes, I do think that should definitely be on the list, the whole Walnut Bottom into Willow. And I think the others too, the Hanover at Clay and Bedford, I've seen significant flooding at that intersection. And these are all sort of big major intersections that funnel traffic throughout town, as well as East High Street at Spring Garden. So I think I agree with the priorities. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just, I'm not familiar with what the corrective measure options are. Is it safe to assume in all of these places, the limiting factor is just the pipe size locally, and the idea of increasing the size downstream wouldn't have a net effect over multiple areas? Is that?
It depends on the location. So, for instance, it floods right out on South and Hanover, and there are storm sores on both the north and south side of South Street that flow down to Latort Spring Run, just east of East Street. We could make those pipes way bigger, and it's not going to have any impact. Primarily because it's discharging into Latort Spring Run, and Latort Springs Run, the elevation dictates how much it backs up.
Okay. So all of the remedies are going to be local?
Yes.
For all these? Okay.
Now, that being said, there are likely going to be remedies for the Walnut Bottom Road area because that is such a large drainage basin far upstream of where the flooding occurs.
I had two questions. One was just simply because some things I see flood more than others. So I was actually surprised that one wasn't on the priority list, which is the West High by Bosler. So I was wondering if you could just speak to that, because I have a feeling people will ask that. And the other one was just, I think you said that the priority on Walnut Bottom was not at the Y with it was what they were saying. But we had talked before about working with hats in the roundabout, and so I'm just wondering that particular intersection. Could you just refresh my memory on the timeline on any sort of traffic upgrades as well, and then we could incorporate stormwater most likely if those things all came together at the same time.
Okay. Let me do the second first, and then you can repeat the first one. Regarding Walnut Bottom Road, West and Willow, we worked with Tri-County Regional Planning Commission and HATS to have that intersection added to PennDOT's 5-year plan. So they do have it as a priority area that will eventually have some transportation improvement completed, and their schedule is starting that work in 2024 and likely taking 4 years.
And the West High Street.
So the West High Street one, that is identified on the map. Yes. Yeah, it's more of a nuisance from splashing. There is a solution there, and I think that solution will be concurrent with when PennDOT paves West High Street, because we need to put a pipe under the road.
Susan, we just talked about this afternoon. It's on the 10-year plan. That's probably been a 10-year plan for 30 years. Yeah.
So we just have, I just need to know what I'm telling the residents.
Yeah, we've talked about trying to motivate that to actually move along. So we'll hopefully have more on that soon.
Thank you.
There's an issue on Kerr and North Hanover, but I think some of our flooding issues are not stormwater, it's grading. Kerr's and North Hanover, it looks to me, I do a lot of puddle jumping there. It looks like it might be a grading issue. So if we could maybe look at areas where it's not a stormwater but a grading issue, because I think there are multiple places where we could reduce the flooding on the street with grading changes.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's very flat in the borough, and water tends to pond. The final component of the Carlisle Connectivity Project will include some modifications on North Hanover Street around Kerr. Whether that addresses it or not, maybe a little bit, but not entirely.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay. Do you feel like you have all the feedback you're going to get, Mark? Because I think you do. That's all there is. Okay. Thanks again, Mark. There is no new business. Last opportunity for all this public comment that's sitting out there waiting for us. Joyce, I assume we have no one by Zoom. Okay. All right. Thank you. Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.